The population of people who identify as AAPI Latinos, aka Asian Latinos, is increasing, but a lot of people feel like they're being ignored.
Yeah, and they're almost all in California. Andrew, the number rose from 350,000 in the year 2000 to almost 900,000 in 2022. Let's run some clips.
I'm half Taiwanese and half Brazilian.
Part Mexican and part Filipino.
Dominicano Chino.
I grew up in a Japanese household. Pretty much I was confused.
It's always very confusing and how the cultures combine because they're so similar but they're so different at the same time.
One of the challenges I face, and I feel like most multiracial people face, is never feeling enough. In my case, it's never feeling Asian or Latino enough.
The Dominicans or Latins show more love, affection to a child, while the Asian show love in another way.
No one knows what you are. I get called Indian a lot, which is a compliment, which is not what I am.
My favorite part about being Asian Latinx is that there is an infinite amount of ways that we can be mixed, and each one is culturally rich, beautiful, and valid.
I would like to let everyone who is half Asian, half Latino, that you're not alone. We completely understand. I completely understand.
Boom, man. Hey, Andrew, were you aware of AAPI Latinos? I actually did not know this term. I knew they existed. I knew people that were mixed. Andrew, we had an employee that was half Korean, half Mexican. His dad was Korean. His mom was Mexican.
I mean, big shout out to the boxer Brandon Lee. He's half Korean, half Mexican.
Eva Lovia.
Eve, you're a big fan. So I guess there are Asian Latino people, but especially in California where the populations of Asians and Latinos are so in huge numbers. There's a ton of Asians. California has almost half of the Asians in America.
And you know what's interesting, Andrew? Texas and California, they have ancient Asian and Latino populations from 100 years ago, as well as ones that just arrived 5 years ago.
Oh, you're saying even back in the early 1900s, they were already mixing with Chinese or Filipinos.
Yes, and I do think that the children, let's say, for example, you're fourth generation Mexican on your mom's side and you're fourth generation Chinese, like a railroad Chinese, for example, on your father's side, you are probably more likely going to be just raised as American neutrally in terms of culture.
Yeah, and that's what it says in the story. I mean, there's this girl who's being covered who's half Mexican, half Chinese. And because I think visually she looks a little bit more Chinese, but also the way she was raised was just American, but people just assumed she was Chinese. So I guess she kind of leaned into her Chinese side. It also depends on where you grow up. Listen, if you're a half Latino, half Asian person growing up in the Asian enclave, maybe you lean more Asian. If you're a half Asian kid who's growing up in the Latino enclave, you might lean more Latino.
And I think it depends on how fobby your parents are.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Let's take a look at this. Other trends in the data analysis of AAPI Latinos said that they placed higher than Latinos overall, but lower than Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders in educational attainment and home ownership. So basically 33% of AAPI Latinos have a bachelor's degree, 55% of Asian Americans, and 19% of all Latinos. So literally it was in the middle.
Well, interesting.
I mean, that is completely logical, right?
Yeah, I guess it's interesting that they have data for that. Yeah.
Hey, by the way, guys, this was done by the Latino Institute at UCLA. So this is their study.
So here's my take before we get into the comment section, because obviously there's a lot of funny comments about this. I just feel like that, yeah, I guess almost 1 million of these Latino Asian mixes. And I want to say, I feel like it's a lot of Filipinos, but also other Asians too mixing in with Latinos. But I feel like just because Filipinos, culturally, it's a little closer.
But a lot of people were saying the more recent mixes were Korean and Mexican because a lot of Koreans are actually very Christian. And Christianity, obviously, Catholicism, very close to each other.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. I already, off the top of my head, Brandon Lee, the boxer, is half Korean, half Mexican. Our old editor, Korean and Mexican. So we already know off the top of our heads a few Korean and Mexicans.
I will say this. On the Korean and Mexican mixes, it was always a Korean dad.
Yes. Yo, what did we call Fred?
Mole Jjigae.
Mole Jjigae. That was his nickname. We were just being funny, guys. But yeah, let's get into the comment section.
Somebody said, I just thought we were called Filipinos because a lot of people who are half Asian and half Latino get mistaken as Filipino because Filipinos oftentimes, I guess, archetypically have those features, right?
Well, yeah. Also, some Filipinos are actually Spanish, part Spanish, which is the same as, yeah.
Double the rice. We
funny.
don't have a family tree. We have an entire forest, obviously referring to gigantic sort of hyper charged pings on both sides of the family. I could see that. You go to family events nonstop throughout the week.
Right.
Somebody said, I am Asian Hispanic, and basically it just depends on what you look like. Basically, the world is going to treat you on how you look unless you look like literally the mix in between. Do you agree with that? Because some Latino guy was saying, my dad's Japanese, but I just look Latino. So in this world, I've just been Latino.
Yeah, it also depends on how you were raised. But like if his dad wasn't always putting him in a super like Japanese context, so he's not super close with the Japanese side. And then it was up to him to choose his own path. And usually most people will go with the path that chooses them. So if the Latino world comes to you more and there's no other forces pulling you back into the Asian world, then yeah, you'll be more Latino. Makes sense.
Right. To your point, usually people choose the path of least resistance, right?
Right. And also, yeah, just least resistance and whatever is pulling them, what's pulling them in.
This is a crazy comment. When my daughter was born, she was immediately sampled for Down syndrome testing because she was a slanty-eyed baby coming out of a Latina, and that was the hospital's knee-jerk reaction.
Dang.
That's crazy. Well, thank God you got a healthy kid. And somebody said, I'm Puerto Rican and Mexican. My husband is Chinese. We have a daughter who will be 3 years old. We always wonder about how she will deal with her identity when she gets older. This message is much needed in today's very tense racial climate. Thanks so much for this video. Do you think it will be... Because to me, Asians and Latinos, in terms of large numbers, I understand both groups have been here for 200 years, 100 years. Obviously, especially Latinos being next door neighbors to North America or being part of North America with Mexico. But I'm saying that, like, I don't feel like there's any beef between the Asian and Latino community.
Right. No, I don't think there is.
It's not like two sides that hate each other.
No. I mean, obviously, I think it's hard for an entire community to hate each other. But I do think that on the census forms moving forward, especially in California, they're probably going to need to have, like, all the boxes, right? Singular boxes, and then say if you're a mix of two or more, then write it down here. Ooh. So now they're going to be tracking more accurately who is mixed. And I know that a lot of people are going to be like, oh, well, when it becomes that mix, like who cares about race? Well, I think if things are half-half, I think it's still worth tracking. I do think if somebody is like is a mix of more than four things, it's almost like, I don't know, maybe they're just a mixed person.
I think that the American census, they track these things for distribution of resources, but also because until voting patterns change, like if voting patterns completely break from correlation with race, they might stop tracking it.
Right.
But as long as there is a hard correlation, and to be honest, guys, I've looked at the stats, there still is, people are going to track it because they want to win elections and have their squad maintain control of the infrastructure, right?
Whatever information helps me achieve my goal, I will ask people those questions.
Right. Somebody said, I think by Asian girls, the OP really meant Filipina girls. Because there was this video where this guy was like, hey, how come Asian girls don't mess with Mexican guys? Let's run that clip.
I have a question for the Asian girls out there. Why don't you guys fuck with Mexican?
Boom, Andrew. This turned into a very interesting discussion about what types of Asians mix. Do Southeast Asians mix with Latinos more? Do they mix less? Do East Asian girls? Of course, this descendant in East Asian girls only like white guys.
No, I don't really think that's true. Obviously, I think that Filipinos do mix quite a bit. But I think after that, especially Latino-wise, I think it's Chinese and Korean. Because there's just more Chinese people. So Chinese people, population-wise, are more, I guess you would say, similar to Mexican, because like those are the biggest groups of the Latinos that are in America.
Well, everybody thinks all Latinos are Mexican, and everybody thinks all Asians are Chinese.
Exactly. So that's why I think a Chinese-Mexican mix is very common. Korean-Mexican mix is very common. But I don't actually see that many Vietnamese and Latino mixes, but I see a lot of Filipino mixes. So to me, the top three are Filipino mixing with Latino, Chinese, and Korean. But I guess maybe not all, like Vietnamese and Indians don't mix as much with Latinos, right?
I haven't seen anybody that was half Indian and half Mexican.
I have not met that person.
I could see some religious like things being
of course,
well.
of course.
But
but
that's gonna present a barrier.
Indians mix like a little bit less, anyways. But I'm saying, like for example, Viet's like I don't know that many Latino Viet people. I'm sure there is, but I don't know them.
So. Right. Ultimately, I think this. I mean, I do think the perception of the Asian and Latino community, it's both similar and it's different. I think they're both perceived as the two non-American groups. I think white and black people are considered like more American than Asians and Latinos. Like to be honest, and are treated that way on like voting forms. But it's really interesting to see, I don't know. I mean, there was a lot of discussion about white collar, blue collar, this aspirational image, that aspirational image. But I do say this, Andrew, a lot of rice and a lot of family.
Let's go. All right, everybody, please hit that like button. Let us know what you think down below. Are you of mixed heritage? And what do you think about this? Does there need to be more boxes on the census? Probably eventually. But they can't have too many boxes because then that gets confusing. I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below. Until next time, we out.